experience is not a wasted experience. I'd say go into something with the expectation that it's going to leave you with some kind of a positive impact. And I've got friends who are very passionate about very different things to me, but I see them passionate about the things that they're passionate about, and it lights a fire inside of me because I'm like, that's brilliant.
So, Lesh, welcome.
Hey, right?
Yeah, how are you?
Good. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So we're gonna get right into it. So obviously you're a life coach, spiritual journey. So I think what I want to do is kind of go back a little bit and kind of like what gave you the drive to get into that?
Do you know, it's crazy because I always tell people like my life has changed so radically in like the last 13, 14 years from where it was. I always kind of go back to like being 22 years old. That's kind of where it really started. And it came off the back of almost being engaged and then that relationship breaking down and my life going down a completely different trajectory. And then making all these choices to push my comfort zone and then meeting new people and being inspired by their journeys and learning about various aspects. I met a friend who became a mentor at like 27, I think it was. And we kind of got talking about various different concepts that I'd never heard of. And her journey kind of inspired me to sort of take drastic action in my own life. Yeah. Where I thought that there were areas that I was sort of missing out on and not taking risks, that I was kind of playing it safe. And the more I kind of started pushing my comfort zone, the more I kind of got myself out there, the more I was like, oh, you can consciously create a life for yourself and you can do that in any aspect. So if you're not happy in a particular area, it doesn't mean you have to settle. Yeah, you can just kind of reevaluate what is a priority to you in that moment in your life and then just kind of go, okay, well, this is where I was, but this is where I want to now go. And how do I consciously create that as opposed to just kind of letting life happen to me? How do I, build and structure my life and create this kind of amazing jigsaw puzzle for myself that I'm content with, even if it looks different to somebody else's. Yeah. And the more I kind of started doing that, the more people kind of reached out to me and they were like, I just love the way like you live your life. I love the way like, you have this kind of main character energy and all this kind of other stuff. Like, what inspires you? How do you sort of go about doing that? And I just kind of passed on the things that I was taught by people who taught me. And it became like an organic thing where I always kind of knew I wanted to help people from a young age. But I think everybody on some level wants to find purpose and find drive and find a meaning for their own life. And for me, realizing that I was able to give back to other people the things that had been given to me just made me feel more alive and made me feel good. Plus I love people. Like, I'm such a people person, which is ironic because when I was at school and stuff I was very introverted. Yeah. But I think one of the ironies of life I find with a lot of people is people who tend to be quite introverted early on. They are the ones that then later on in life feel more comfortable taking the bigger risks, and they take the bigger risks and then doors start opening for them and you see them sort of change their life in their 30s and their 40s and you're like, they're not the same person they were in their 20s. And it's all about that mindset shift and that perspective shift. And the more you can do that, the more you can kind of, you can create anything you want. I genuinely believe you can create anything you want in your life if you have enough passion for it. Yeah, and I definitely think seeing from your journey and what you sort of put on social media and stuff like that and speaking to you, I think you definitely have sort of helped people out and you've kind of really opened people's eyes to the way of like, manifestation, like resilience and all different things. So like over the last couple of years, what have sort of some key learnings you've taken away from maybe how you've changed in yourself? I think for me, one of the biggest things that I kind of always come back to is this idea that life is always happening for you, not to you. And I think a lot of people, I'd say probably about 99% of people walk around with this kind of victim complex. When something negative happens to you, they always kind of respond to it from being a victim. And they fall into this pattern of thinking, oh, woe is me, this is terrible, you know, I'm not going to be able to get past this, like this person did this to me, you know, my parents did this to me, my boss did this to me, all these, you know. And what people need to realize is that the moment you start living in this vibrational frequency of being a victim, that's it, you're done. Like you're not going anywhere with that kind. You can't build anything from a victim.
It's like a mentality type of thing. Yeah. Would you say that's people's emotional intelligence and accountability, sort of like when they just do the blaming kind of type thing?
I'd say a lot of people don't realize the fact that creation comes from. I always talk about it from two aspects. Like you can only ever live in two kind of states, two emotional states, and every single day you wake up, you choose which state you live in. You can live in the vibrational state of love or fear. If you're living in a vibrational state of fear, for example, with the context of relationships, like I'm never going to find. You hear people say all the time, "I'm never going to find a partner," you know, or "No one's ever going to love me," or you know, and it's like, yeah. That's the reality you're creating. The more you tell yourself that, the more you're going to run into people who are going to treat you that way and make you feel invalidated about yourself and less about yourself, because you're putting it out to the universe that is your reality. That's what you're experiencing. So the universe kind of goes, yes, more of that, please.
Yeah.
But I think the more you can kind of give yourself compassion and self-love and understanding that figuring it out is a forever journey. You're not supposed to have it figured out by 30, 40, 50, 60. Like the reality is you can change your life at 50. You can go skydiving at 60. You can pack up your entire life into a suitcase and move halfway across the world at 70.
Yeah.
And most people think that they get to a certain point in life, especially people in their 30s. Being in my 30s now, I find that a lot of my friends are kind of settling into this way of thinking. They're like, well, the best years of my life have gone by. Like, you know, I've done my 20s and that was the time to take risks. And, you know, I can't take risks now in my 30s because I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got, you know, career and all the rest of it. And the more people kind of fall into that trap, the less likely they are to kind of take the risks and open new doors for themselves.
Yeah. So back onto what you said about relationships and stuff like that as an example, do you feel like it's people's own insecurities? And if people ask like how they have that mindset, is it with them themselves, or is it just the way society allows things to happen?
I think we as a society have pressured our generation especially and future generations to believe that unless you have someone, you are incomplete. If you do not have a partner, there is something wrong with you because you haven't settled down, you haven't started a family, you know, by a certain age. There's this, I call it a shopping checklist of life where people say you're supposed to have a house, you're supposed to have a partner, you're supposed to have kids, you're supposed to have a stable career, you're supposed to drive a nice car, you're supposed to have money in the bank. Like I'm in my mid-30s and I'm currently single, traveling the world, no mortgage, no house, no kids, and I've never been more fulfilled. But some of my friends who have those things on that shopping checklist, you can see that they don't have a passion or drive or sense of direction in their life. So I always say to people, there's no right or wrong way to live your life. Live your life as you feel is right for you. And when it comes to the context of relationships, I think that you have to get to a point where you are so comfortable being by yourself. Yeah. Because if you're outsourcing your happiness to a partner, to a friend, to a career, if you're putting something on a pedestal, then you are idolizing it. And if you're idolizing it, you are future planning your happiness. You're saying that happiness is a destination in the future, whereas happiness in reality is a place in time, and the place in time is here and now, because you could go out tomorrow and you could get hit by a bus. You know, something could happen. I had a friend of mine sadly pass away last year. She was 31 years old. She had a whole life in front of her. But the beautiful thing I learned from her journey and her lesson, like God bless her, she was somebody who she never woke up without expressing gratitude for her life and for being able to go out every single day and help people in her career. She was a nurse, you know, she went out into her community and she did a lot of stuff for other people. She traveled, she did, you know, all this amazing stuff with her friends and built memories. And she was one of those people who very, very far and few between. You meet people like that and they're just constantly present.
Yeah.
because they have understood and learned that life itself is here and now. You can't plan what's going to happen in the future, and you can't do anything about what's happened in the past. The past is past; it's gone. Let it go. Sitting and dwelling about something that's happened is destroying your moment here.
Yeah,
and feeling worried about the future is causing you anxiety. Like, sit and be present as much as you can, because the more you do that, the more you're going to attract good things into your life.
So just on that point, if someone said, I want to have a personal goal to reach something, what would you say to that sort of person? Because obviously you say you can't plan the future and things like that. So like, if people want to plan things in their head, but then obviously how would you approach that?
I'd say people need to get a lot better at asking themselves what they actually want. I think a lot of people walk through life on this kind of autopilot scheme where they just let life happen to them. There aren't many people who walk around and actually ask themselves, do I want that? And for me personally, you know, I look at my friends and I see their journeys, and I see people buying houses, getting married. I see them, you know, settling into careers and doing all that. And I always ask myself, that's great for them. I love that. I champion, you know, when I see somebody doing something that makes them happy. But you have to ask yourself, just because that person is doing that, is that the right journey for me? Do I want to go down that same road? Because every single person walking around on this planet is statistically a miracle in themselves. Like, the chances of you being born are 400 million to 1. You know, you got 10 times more chance of winning the lottery than you have a chance of actually having a life.
Yeah, 100%.
And the beautiful thing is that life is so expansive now, and there is so much opportunity with social media. There is so much opportunity with the fact that, you know, you can be a nomadic worker, you can travel around the world and work remotely. And these are all opportunities that our parents never had. But with that choice, you also have to understand that there comes a certain element of responsibility in asking yourself, well, what do I actually want? When I'm building this jigsaw puzzle of my life, what are my goals? And why am I chasing them? Am I chasing my goals out of insecurity or expectation based on what other people want from me? Do my parents want me to be this? And therefore, I am now doing this to please my parents. Because if I'm doing something to please my parents and chasing a career, I'm going to look back at my life at 80 and I'm going to go, well, I spent 40 years doing a career that I didn't actually want to do. I actually hated my job, but I did it because I wanted to make my parents happy. Your job is not to make your parents happy. It's not to make your partner happy. It's not to make your friends happy. Your job is to, first and foremost, put yourself in a good state where you wake up every single day passionate about the things you do. You love the life that you live.
Yeah.
And with that comes this beautiful aura and this beautiful energy that you can then take out into the world, and you then set the kind of example for other people to do the same. There's a great poem where Marianne Williamson, she talks about this idea of light, and it was on the Coach Carter movie, that our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Yeah.
And I won't repeat the whole poem, but at the end, she basically says, as you let your own light shine, you unconsciously give other people to do the same, you know, with theirs. So whatever you're passionate about, and I've got friends who are very passionate about very different things to me, but I see them passionate about the things that they're passionate about, and it lights a fire inside of me, because I'm like, that's brilliant. You're chasing after what makes you happy, irrespective of how it looks for me. I may not agree with your journey, or that may not be the thing that I want for my life, but seeing you do that and go after it with no excuses, no victim complex, no kind of element of, I'm going to wake up at 80 one day and I'm going to have this list of regrets of things I never did. No, you're taking life by the balls and you are going after the things that you want. Yeah. And I think that is the most important question. Ask yourself, why do you want the goals that you want? And when it comes to actually getting them, taking small decisive action every single day to get to that point, because I think a lot of people feel that they have to
look at kind of like the end goal, and then I think they just think, oh, the end goal is here in maybe like 6 months time, but then it's like the short-term goals, and then how do they get there first?
But the other thing I find that when it comes to goal setting is a lot of people will say stuff, oh, I'm going to be at this point by the time I'm 30 or 40 or 50. And they're not doing it from a place of realistic expectation.
I think it's society though, isn't it? Because obviously when we was all younger, we was like, oh, by 28, 29, we're going to be married, have kids, have a house.
Yeah.
But then I think society is just, I think it traps us a lot of the time.
People feel they have something to prove. And the more you feel you have something to prove to somebody else, the more you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, I just came back off, organizing my first wellness retreat. And that was something that I had wanted to do in my mind, it was something I'd wanted to do for about 5 years. But the timing was never right.
Yeah.
The doors hadn't opened.
On that, obviously, that's to do with something we will talk about later in the podcast. But sort of, that was obviously your first proper sort of trip away where you organise, speakers and you had a whole like house and stuff like that. Like how was that sort of trip, and how did you find like, have you taken a moment yet to kind of look back and go, wow, I've just got, 15, 16 people in a house and they're talking about, men's mental health, and they're talking about spiritual awareness, and they're talking about all these different types of topics that, you'd pay probably a lot of money for, and, you've brought loads of people together. So I think really well done for you, because
Thanks.
I think it's rarity to get all them people together in a room and actually talk about all different things. And, especially obviously one segment you did have that weekend was obviously about men's mental health and stuff.
Yeah.
So overall the weekend, how did you sort of find it?
I think it went really, really well. We had a lot of good feedback from people who attended that week. There were a lot of kind of question marks hanging over it before the weekend. We didn't know how certain things would play out in terms of the response to some of the workshops. But what was really great was to see people really get engaged with the workshops and actually doing the work and taking time to reflect on their own lives. We ran it as an alcohol-free weekend because we wanted to take away the distraction element of going to an event, having loads of drinks, and then basically having conversations with people that were surface level. And one of the first things we said when we gathered people together on the Friday night was, for the meet and greet, we said we want the overall aim of this weekend is for you to come away and have developed deep, meaningful friendships, relationships with people, and got to know people on a deeper level. Because I find a lot of time, especially when it comes to travel, you meet people sort of in like a transient capacity. You kind of meet them and you get to know a little bit about them, like, their journey, where they've been, their name, how many siblings they have, all that kind of stuff. But you don't really get to know what makes a person tick. And for me, that's where the really interesting stuff starts happening.
Really deep, meaningful conversations and the sitting down. And it's really interesting. You mentioned about you as a like an event host decided not to have the alcohol element.
Yeah.
Was that like a easy decision to make, or was it more just you really wanted to you really wanted to get people kind of in more of a mindset of, because obviously when people drink, obviously they have different sort of mindsets and confidence. And comes out.
I think it was a lot about, number one, take away the Dutch courage element, so people feeling they have to have a drink to get over their anxiety or whatever. Also take away the kind of drinking culture element of it being sort of a party scene. We wanted it to be a kind of, I don't want to use the word spiritual, because it really kind of, it wasn't about that. It was more about getting people to a place where they could sort of get back in touch with themselves, and whatever that meant for people, whether it was from a spiritual aspect, whether it was from a personal goal perspective, whether it was from just better understanding, and appreciating where they had been to where they are now. Or just, I had a couple of people message me after the weekend and they were like, for me, I wasn't expecting it, but by the end of the weekend, this light just went on. Yeah. I was dealing with something when I came here on the Friday, like I had a crisis going on in my life and I didn't know how to resolve it. I've come to this and I've come out the other end and I've gone, I know my solution. I know what my next step is. And I think for a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that self-validation in their own journey of kind of going, I feel like I've got something here. I feel like I've got, like, there's this opportunity that's presented itself in my life and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know if it's the right thing for me. I don't know if I should pursue it. I don't know if it's the right, And for a lot of people, what they really want is they want a sense of external validation.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong thing to do. Like I always say to people, if your gut's telling you something, follow through on it. because
they always say trust your gut. Like your gut, if your gut's telling you something, most of the time, 90% of the time, it is right, because your mindset is like, oh, my gut's saying something here. Like it could be anything in life, but when you get, everybody uses that phrase, oh, the gut feeling. And like most of the time, it is like pretty much solid.
I always kind of describe it as like the butterfly effect. Like when I look back on my journey from 22 to 35 now, I was almost engaged. And then I kind of always kind of teeter back to that moment going, how much different would my life look if I ended up marrying that person and potentially having children and everything else? And there's no way any of the things that have happened to me now would have existed. I wouldn't be sat here having this podcast with you. I wouldn't have, traveled to Southeast Asia and gone and done 6 months teaching out there. I wouldn't have gone to Morocco and volunteered, on street kids projects. There are so many things that have happened as a result of this kind of butterfly effect of a decision that was made of going, okay, this didn't work out. I'm heartbroken. What can I do to get over my heartbreak? And the first thing I did was, bought myself an SLR camera. I was sat in my apartment in Poland, really depressed, because I'd given my identity away to this person, and my sense of self-worth went with it when that person left.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for something, and what I was actually looking for was within me the entire time. It sounds really corny, but it's so true. And I went and bought this SLR camera, went back to my apartment. I booked a ticket back home. And then 2 weeks later, I booked my first solo trip to go to Ireland. And when I did that, I was hooked. I spent the next 8 years traveling the world solo. I met loads of people, had great adventures, great experiences. 30, got what I thought was my dream career. Yeah. And I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. That was the goal. It was something I'd wanted to do since 17, but I realized now it was instilled in me by my parents. My dad never became an accountant. Like, he was somebody who wanted to be an accountant. That was his life goal.
Yeah.
And he rightly or wrongly, I loved my father, I really did. He was a great, great human being, but he projected his inability and his, giving up on his dream. He projected that on me, because he wanted the best for me. He thought that me being a lawyer would make me happy. But I'd never actually asked myself the question, is that the correct route for me? And so when I got the job, I did it for 2 years. And I remember waking up and sort of going to work and not really being passionate about it. And then the universe just kind of went, this is not for you. I'm going to rip this away.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rip it away so painfully that it's going to steer you in another direction. You're going to lose your sense of self. You're going to lose your sense of direction. You're going to lose your sense of comfort. You're going to experience everything. Like, the entire rug got pulled out from underneath me, because when you've been chasing something for that long and you finally get it and then it gets ripped away, you feel like your entire life is spiraling. And what a lot of people, I think, need to learn is when you're in that position, you've got two choices. You can stay on the floor. And you can become a victim, like I said, and you can kind of go, all right, I'm going to stay here, but as long as I stay down, I'm down.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. But if you get up and just kind of keep moving and keep progressing and keep trying things, whatever, you're going to find a sense of purpose again. You're going to find a sense of identity again. You're going to find something that makes you passionate. You're going to meet people who are going to connect with you based on where you are in your journey. You're going to meet a new partner. You're going to meet new friends, new business collaborations. All this kind of stuff will come to you, but it's not going to come to you when you're lying on the floor looking up at the ceiling kind of going, well, my life is over. Your life is not over. Like, your life is over when you close your eyes one day and you don't wake up.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, every single day, I woke up this morning and, was on the way here, and I just remember walking through London and I was like, I woke up today. I woke up, and I'm walking around London and I'm sort of seeing all these people and I'm going, how many of these people are actually taking the opportunity to stand and sit and think to themselves, I'm living, I'm breathing, I have the opportunity to make choices. I have the opportunity to chase after something that makes me passionate. I have the opportunity to make a difference. Not many people actually sit and warrant that gratitude.
Yeah.
They don't take that gratitude every single day and look back on it and go, I'm here.
I think it's kind of people appreciating the little small things in life and the small wins. And I think we, as a society or as a mindset, I don't think we do that often, really.
No, we don't. I think we're conditioned to live on this hedonic kind of treadmill of life where we get used to a certain element of existence. So we take a lot of things for granted. Like, for example, you wake up in the morning, you turn on your tap, and you've got water coming out out the tap, and you're able to. You've got that. There are how many millions of people around the world, and third world countries who don't have access to clean water, but we take it for granted every single day. We just take it as a given, so we don't think about it. The fact that we can go out and buy ourselves something to eat, and do that willingly and have disposable income to be able to do that and sit with our friends, at the pub and have a drink, or just be able to go and travel somewhere and get in a car and turn the key. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not driving the car that I want, but they're complaining about the fact that they don't have the car they want, but they have a car.
Yeah.
Whereas the person who doesn't have a car, who cycles to work every single day, 6 miles, that person's dream is to have a car. And it's to have the falling apart kind of car that you've got, the one that's got all the problems wrong with it and all the rest of it. That's their dream.
Yeah.
You're living somebody else's dream every single day you wake up. But because you are constantly striving, especially in Western countries, like America's really bad for it at the moment. The UK is kind of up there as well. We're constantly living in this cycle of more. And you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? Whether you're chasing validation through money, through sex, through popularity, through status, through whatever it may be, you have to ask yourself, at what point is enough? Is it enough?
Yeah.
Because inside here is the only time you're going to get that sense of validation.
Yeah, so what would you say to people who are kind of like that? How do they get out of that mindset, or how do they change their maybe philosophy around that?
I think people need to be more compassionate with themselves. I think people need to be a lot kinder to themselves in their own head. I think the average person now statistically thinks about 60,000 thoughts per day. 2/3 of those are negative. And a lot of people, when something negative happens, they complain about it, for 6 months. They dwell on it for 6 months. A job didn't work out, a relationship didn't work out, or there were, I don't know, something happens, and they sit and they wallow in self-pity for far too long. And yet when something good happens, statistically the average person celebrates it for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people come to me and they say, sometimes people think that I'm bragging on social media about my life. I'm not. I just choose to celebrate my life more than I complain about it. That doesn't mean that I don't wake up some days and I'm like, my brain sort of goes into this mode of like, oh, you know what? Yeah, there are things that I still don't have that I would like. No, but I catch myself because I understand that going down the avenue of focusing on the negativity is not going to lead me anywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to lead me down a negative spiral. It's going to increase my, level of depression. It's going to increase my anxiety. It's going to make me less valuable to my friends and my family and, less productive as a human being. But I think you have to understand that compassion for yourself, if you're a good person and you're literally trying every single day to be a good person and you're not going out your way to hurt someone, you're not going out your way to kind of, put negative energy out there, then as far as I'm concerned, you deserve to give yourself a pat on the back. You really do. But most people don't do that. Most people wait for the validation to come from other people. And the validation is not going to come from other people. The clapping and the validation and the sense of achievement that you want, give that to yourself every day.
Yeah.
Whatever you want from somebody else, give it to yourself first and then give it to other people. And the more you do that, the more you're just going to feel good about yourself. So
good advice.
Yeah.
So obviously you're a life coach.
Yeah.
For people who wouldn't know what that is, could you just kind of briefly explain what that kind of looks like for you and kind of that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I think for me, I kind of always brand it around this idea that people I sort of talk to and coach, they come to me from the sort of premise of their life is at a crossroads and they don't know which way to go. And it's not about telling people how to live their life. That's the first thing, because no one can tell you how to live your life. Like when clients come to me or I have conversations with friends or whatever, I probably know about 10% of their life and what they've been through and who they are as a human being. You are the only person who knows you. You are the only person who has woken up with you every single day. You are the only person who is going to fall asleep with you every single day of your life. Even your parents, will not know you as long as you know you. So fostering that relationship with yourself and understanding yourself and getting in tune with your gut and your intuition and what feels right for you is what I kind of gear my clients towards, and kind of make them realize that I can give you the tools, I can give you the kind of, the toolbox, but the toolbox is then yours to apply to your own life and do with it what you will. And I always kind of encourage people to be like, okay, go away and think about this and ask yourself these questions and then come back to me with the answers, because I'm not going to give them to you.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to spend the next 10 years traveling the world and being a nomad and that makes you happy, go for it. If you want to be a CEO of a business, in New York, and that's what makes you happy, and you want to wear a power tie every single day and drive a Ferrari and that makes you happy, great, go and do that. Like, it's all about understanding what you want out of life, what your parameters are, what your priorities are, and then tailoring your life around that, and understanding that there will be people that drop off. There will be people that get magnetized in by your energy. But a lot of people think that they have to live their life. And this is a big insecurity for a lot of people, I find, is they feel when they start living their life a certain way, they want everyone to love them.
Because they want to change the perspective of how they are.
Yeah.
And then they expect things to happen because they would, I think you see sometimes you see it in potentially relationships, they try and change the way they are because they think that that's going to better them, but then actually they go into this void and they're like, oh, I'm actually feeling worse.
I always say to people, from a dating perspective, when I date people, I always say very early on, I'm like, my job is not to make you happy. My job is to empower you and encourage you to go after the things that you want. And I am not your priority one. You are priority one for you, and I am priority two. So your relationship with yourself is first and foremost the most important thing to me. I want you to be happy, and I want you to have drive, and I want you to have purpose, and I want you to be going after the things that you want. But a lot of people get it inverted. They come into friendships or relationships trying to make the other person happy, and you can't do that, because if you're giving to somebody else their expectations of what they want from you, all you're going to do is burn the other person out. Whereas if you're sat on the sidelines, cheerleading someone and going, I want you to go get that, and not taking any kind of what's the word I'm looking for, reward in it. Because if I'm dating someone and I see them go after someone and they get it, I'm like, that's all you.
Yeah.
You did that. I'm not taking credit for it. That's what I was looking for. I'm not taking credit for your successes, for your accomplishments. That's something that you did. But because you're happy and I'm happy, we can then come together, and it's a healthy kind of dynamic that you have with the person. And the same applies with your friendships. I think you should be the cheerleader for other people, and you should be encouraging people to do more for themselves and give more for themselves, because all that's going to do is make people feel better about who they are. Whatever that looks like to them.
Yeah. One point I want to sort of briefly touch on is you mentioned about kind of finding your people and things like that, and sort of you're talking about friendship groups or relationships, kind of how do, and obviously you did mention your friend that obviously sadly passed away, and obviously she lived life to the fullest and things like that. Kind of how would you say to people, how do you find your people? People say I want to find my people, or find my my squad or whatever.
I think you have to ask yourself very, very importantly, what are your values? What do I value? What are my standards? And stick to those standards. My friends know that the biggest things for me are trust, loyalty, respect, compassion, and respectfully, I've got a very good friendship group now. I've got amazing people in my life who I'm very, very privileged to know. They're all doing incredible things. But if I bring on a new human being into my life now, I make it very clear that those are my parameters. Those are my standards. Those are my boundaries. And what I'm asking for is what I'm then giving to other people. So if I'm asking you for trust, loyalty, respect, compassion, it's because that's what I'm going to give you if we are friends, if we are in a relationship, if we are, business acquaintances. Because a lot of people just take on a human being without really vetting them and understanding that not everyone is for you. And that is the biggest sticking point for a lot of people as well, is understanding that no matter how good you are as a human being, there are always going to be people who dislike you just because it's you. And it's no reflection on your self-worth. It's no reflection on who you are as a human being. It's just that person is different to you. They have different priorities. They have different values. And you have to accept the fact that you are, I always say to people, I'm Marmite. Like, you either like me or you don't.
Yeah.
And
I do like that. I do like that saying.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not going to lie, I can't stand Marmite. I don't know anybody who likes Marmite. Like, I'm like, what is, like, how many spreads there are in the world, and you choose Marmite. You go to the shop, you look at peanut butter, honey, jam, everything, and you go, oh, Marmite be nice today. But it's just like you said,
it's just a good metaphor, because, like, for a lot of people, you're gonna rub people up the wrong way. When you start getting really passionate and really content with living your life a certain way, there are going to be people that are going to be triggered by it.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people who are going to not understand you, and they're going to be people going, well, why are you doing that? That's just, that's corny, that's cheesy. And I'm like, great, if that's your interpretation of it, that's fine, that's your interpretation. But your interpretation of how I live my life is no reflection on my reality, because my reality is I'm doing what makes me happy. It fills me with drive. It makes me wake up every single day feeling good about myself. Like I said, when I was a lawyer, I used to wake up 7 o'clock in the morning, get ready for work, and I had this pit in my stomach. But now I happily wake up 5-6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm fueled by a mission. I'm fueled by a purpose. I'm fueled by an understanding that I am meeting people. I am shifting perspectives, but the beautiful thing is I'm also meeting people who are shifting mine. And I'm constantly inspired by the people I meet, simply because they are them, and simply because they are unapologetic about the way they love people, the way they chase after their goals, the way they coordinate things within their own life, the way they treat their family, and just all that kind of stuff. I'm like, authenticity for me is the biggest quality. I think if you are deeply unapologetic about your energy and you're a good person, that's the catalyst. Because you can be authentic and you can be unapologetic, but you can be not a good person. You can be, you can go around and you can put people down and whatever, but you can still be authentic. But I think if you're authentic and you're treating people with love and respect, and you're trying to put that good energy out there, the law of attraction is just going to manifest that back to you.
Yeah.
It's like, I always describe it as a boomerang. Like, you throw a boomerang back, and the boomerang is the energy. And wherever energy you throw out there is the energy you're going to get back from other people. So if you're putting out negative energy and then you're getting negative energy back in your life and things are going wrong and you're asking yourself, why does this keep happening to me? I'm like, have you actually looked at what you're putting out into the world? Like, are you being self-critical of people? Are you putting people down? Are you going out there and are you continuously complaining about things? Because the universe is listening. Like, whatever you think about and whatever you focus on is the reality that you will attract. And every single day you have a choice. Like, what's good is always available.
Yeah.
But so is what's wrong. So what are you focusing on? You're focusing on the good, you're focusing on the bad. Because whatever you focus on is what becomes your emotional home. And your emotional home is the biggest thing for you, because that's where you live. It's not the four walls. It's not the car you drive. It's not the partner you sleep next to at night. None of those things are your home.
Yeah, of course.
Your home is your emotional home. It's what you choose to wake up to every single day and say, this is what I'm choosing today. And for me, my emotional home every single day when I wake up is gratitude, peace, understanding, loving myself, and understanding that, I'm going to mess up. I'm not a perfect human being. I'm an imperfect human being. But every single day I wake up, I have the opportunity to do better. And there'll be times I come up short. There'll be times I start a project, doesn't work out, and I go, cool, didn't work out. But rather than focusing on the fact that, that was a failure, I'm like, it wasn't a failure. I actually learned something about myself. And I either learned that was for me or it wasn't for me. So either way, I win.
Yeah.
Like, I don't lose, because I'm fine tuning and going about my life and sort of changing things for myself, and understanding that every single thing that happens to me is an opportunity for growth. And having that growth mindset, I think, is just so important for people, because so many people don't have it.
Yeah, 100% agree. So another point I want to get onto now is obviously abbreviated TTS.
Yeah.
Obviously the travel squad.
Yeah.
Could you sort of explain to everybody what that is briefly, and kind of like that sort of thing firstly?
So I guess to kind of tie in what we were talking about before, I had a couple of years ago when my career kind of came to an abrupt end and I was trying to figure out what to do next. Like, one of the big things for me when I sort of start planning where I'm going next in life is to have a vision board. So I remember sitting in my room and putting together this vision board and asking myself, well, what do I want to do now? And at the time I was seeing someone, we had just broken up, it hadn't worked out, we're going different directions, it was mutual, but I sort of put this vision board together and I thought, I want to travel more again. And I want to call in more experiences, and I want to give myself the opportunity to meet new people and really push that comfort zone. And I remember putting together this vision board with like quotes and pictures and stuff like that, places I wanted to go, and, you know, I meet people at the right time, and, you know, I'm calling in new experiences, and my life is always working out, and I'm an adventurer, I'm going hiking, I'm jumping on planes and having, you know, all this amazing stuff happening. And I remember putting it out there on this vision board, and then 2 weeks later scrolling through TikTok, and on my For You page there was a video that got promoted for a community that I'd never heard of called the Travel Squad, and they were advertising some kind of a trip that they'd done, and it was like, I think 50 people or something that they'd taken to Bali, and they'd rented out this huge villa and gone for like a week, and basically had this, you know, huge kind of week of getting to know each other, you know, partying, traveling around together, having these amazing adventures. And I just remember looking at it and going, that sounds amazing. And so researched it a little bit more, found a Facebook group by the Travel Squad, joined, and saw all these people advertising, you know, pictures of themselves, places they were going to be going. And, you know, so my name's, you know, Stephen, and I'm going to bloody Barcelona or something like that between these dates. Come and join me. I was thinking, this is incredible. This is something very, you know, very niche and very unique, whatever. So I remember booking onto a couple of these sort of trips, whatever. The first trip I did was a camping trip to Wales, and I think there was about...
You picked Wales, really?
I know, yeah.
Like, sorry, no offense to the Welsh, no offense to the Welsh people, but, you know, it's raining.
But it was one of those things, because I was really into hiking at the time, and it really appealed to me, because it was like sort of a weekend away, you know, going hiking and just being out in nature and stuff like that in the countryside. And I booked on and, you know, drove all the way out there, realizing on the drive up, I was like, I don't know anyone going on this trip. I'm walking into a room with 17 people that I do not know. How
was that? So if you can recall that sort of memory, that first memory of sort of that experience, what was your foot going through? Because it must be like very daunting to go to, even if it's just Wales, like you're going with very random strangers. Really.
I think what I felt at the time was a level of apprehension, because for me, I was still, obviously I'd never done anything like this before in terms of like going in the community. I've traveled solo a lot, and I'd met people when I was traveling and doing it that way, but going into an actual community, I didn't know what to expect. And I remember sort of driving up there and sort of going, oh, this could go horribly wrong. And looking back on it now, realizing that I was flipping the script in my head, and I was kind of going, every time I had this thought of like, oh, this could go horribly wrong, but in my mind then going, but it could go horribly right. And just sort of being positive about it. Walking into that room with like 17 other people the first time was, it just felt like I was in a place where I needed to be. And then getting to know them, you know, camping together and sort of going on these hikes and sharing experiences and talking about people's journeys and why they'd decided to join this community and, you know, where it had come from and all the rest of it really kind of motivated me to do more of it. And then as I started like doing more of these trips, I started meeting people who were kind of facilitating different aspects within trips. So I met people who started, you know, organizing trips, and, you know, initially met them on a trip that somebody else had organized, and then hearing them say, oh, do you know what, I'm thinking about organizing a trip, and then going and, you know, to their first trip and seeing them suddenly go from a participant or a guest on somebody else's trip to then taking that next step and kind of going, well, if this person organized this trip and made it look this easy, surely I can do it. And just seeing people gravitate towards that, taking that next step from going to being a guest to being an event organizer, to then maybe, I don't know, going to an event and playing around with their phone, taking a couple of photos, to then becoming a videographer or a photographer and pushing that comfort zone and getting to know people and being like, oh, by the way, you know what, I'm really into photography, but I'm really scared to, like, you know, to sort of take that next step. Would you mind if I took a few photos at your event? And somebody just turning around and being like, do you know what? We're looking for a photographer. Do you want to be a photographer for this event? And seeing that person kind of have that light kind of go on, going, you know what? Yeah, I would.
I think that's what makes for context, we're both part of the travel squad.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking the other day when we actually first met, and I was thinking, I was like, was it Butlins?
It was
Butlins in October last year. Anybody who hasn't been to Butlins Weekender, unfortunately Butlins isn't paying me for this, but please go to the Butlins Weekender. Maybe Bognor Regis, but it's a fantastic weekend.
Shameless plug by my friend Steve O'Neill, who organises it.
Yeah, so Butlins are. I'll send you the contract after. But with that, obviously we met at Butlins, and obviously that was my first my first kind of event where I stayed in a shared accommodation with the TTS and stuff, and it was a really good experience. And obviously, as you know, on the last night I gave a whole speech like I was the president or something, like in my Where's Wally's outfit, which is just iconic as they come.
But it was great because you kind of gave that speech to the room, and it was like, you know, you were just filled with gratitude for the fact that, you know, you're around all those people. And it was one of those beautiful moments where, again, a lot of people would see it as corny, but I don't. I just generally think, like, if you are in a situation where you're generally grateful for having had an experience, I think most people in our society don't feel like they can vocalize it.
Yeah.
Like, I tell my male friends I fucking love them all the time. I do. Like, I'm not shy about it. I make it awkward from time to time, like, because I want my friends, I don't want there to ever be a situation in my life. One of my biggest things is where I have to go to someone's funeral and then give a eulogy as to how much I loved that person and how much I cared about that person and how much that person changed my life and made me think about things different. I want to tell my friends that all the time. I want my friends to know it while they're alive. I don't want them to hear it from whatever happens after you die and then sort of, you know, have that conversation, you know, because I think so many people don't do it. They don't, you know, praise their connections and praise their friendships and their family and all the rest of it. And by the time they do, it's too late and they've missed that opportunity. So for me, like, I listened to a podcast a while ago where it was like, someone was talking about this idea of like, whenever you see someone, you don't know if it's the last time you're going to see them again.
Yeah, so you just have that sort of gratitude and that feeling of actually, like, you have to appreciate them every day and stuff.
You do. Like, the last time I saw my friend Kenzie, before obviously she passed away last year, we went on a holiday to south of France, like a big group of us. And I still remember, like, the last time we saw each other when we were saying goodbye at the end of that trip, it was, I describe it as like the perfect way of saying goodbye to someone, because we hugged each other, we told each other we loved each other. You know, it was one of those things of like, that there isn't anything I didn't say in that moment that I wish I could have.
Yeah.
And for me, that is perfect, because she knew that I cared about her. I knew she cared about me. And I think you owe it to yourself to say goodbye to people as you would if you were seeing them for the last time. And leaving things on good terms with people. Like, I don't like this whole idea of like going to sleep angry and having a grudge with someone, whatever. No, talk it out. Have an uncomfortable conversation if you need to. Clarify things with people. Because if you're able to do that and communicate effectively with people, you're going to build relationships and build friendships and build understanding and build 100%. Compassion. So, yeah.
On sort of the travel squad, for anybody who is a member or isn't a member, sort of like what, so obviously, it, you know, what makes it unique to maybe other things that people do, so that unique selling point, or like what makes it different from, you know, if someone said, why do I want to join the travel squad? Like, what would you say to them? I
think for me, it's the variety. I think there is so much variety in terms of the community now, in terms of what people are doing and, you know, the avenues they're taking. You can have, you know, if you want a wellness weekend where there's no alcohol, there's somebody setting something like that up. If you want a hiking weekend, you know, in the Lake District, there's somebody setting that up. If you want to go to Barcelona and go on a huge pub crawl around all the nightclubs and bars, there's somebody doing that. If you want information about, what it takes to be a content creator and sort of go down that avenue, there's an opportunity to do that. There's group chats set up for pretty much every. I mean, you and I know because our phones never stop going off.
Too many group chats, but we love a group chat. We love a group chat.
We do love a group chat.
So group chat for everything. Because you have to have the info one and the confirmed, non-confirmed.
There's so much scope for opportunity, and that's what I love. Like in the time that I've been doing this, and the time that I've been in the travel squad, I've tried everything. I've gone to events as a guest, and then I've set up an event, and then I've gone and co-hosted events. I've been a content creator at events. I have organized events within events. Like there are so many things that I've tried my hand at, and every single time I try my hand at something, it's not so that I can just sit there and then brag to people and be like, look at all this amazing stuff I've done. I'm doing it from the context and the starting point that I want to try as many different things as possible. I want to open as many doors for myself as possible, because by opening more doors, I'm going to understand myself a lot more and know the ones that I do want to walk through, and the ones that I kind of want to go, you know what, I tried that. I liked it, but it wasn't for me. I'm going to close that door now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave that parked. That was a fun experience. Enjoyed it. But it's not something I really want to pursue any further, because, this is more my thing.
Yeah.
And I think more people, when it comes to life, need to open themselves up to more opportunity and more experiences, because again, they're living in that fear mentality of, I can never do that. And that's something I keep coming back to with a lot of people as well. When I meet people and talk about the travel squad, they always talk about this idea of like, people who've never traveled, that is, they always say, oh, I could never do that.
Yeah,
I can never jump.
I feel like you have to try it at least once, or give it a try. A lot of people have probably never stayed in hostels, or never travelled abroad and things like that, or travel to different places, or stayed with people in accommodation. And I think what the travel squad does, it kind of brings people together, and it's a very good name of it, because you're bringing your squad together and you're building that community. And I think what I would want to go on to next is kind of speaking about, obviously they have just released their app, and kind of like, how have you found the app and stuff like that from your own perspective?
I think the app has been a brilliant idea. Like Alex Merritt, obviously, who's set it up, he's done a phenomenal job with it. But I think what it's going to do is it's going to allow people to connect much quicker. It's going to give more scope for opportunity for people to set up their own trips, to build their own squads, like you say, and connect with the people that are on their kind of vibrational frequency and going to the places that they want to go to. Like I'm off to Vietnam in August on a one-way ticket, and I'm already exploring, through the app, people who are kind of aligned on that journey, who are going to be in the same place as me, and going, you're going to be in the same place as me. Let's connect.
Let's meet up.
Let's see if there's room for collaboration. Let's see if there's room to set up a trip. Let's see if there's room to maybe just meet up and have a beer, or just, I don't know, go windsurfing or scuba diving, or so, I don't know, But I think, again, with social media, like the world is just becoming so much smaller, and we are now able to connect with people instantaneously and be able to foster those connections and those relationships, and just be able to, cultivate our life in a much more beneficial way. And I think the app, especially now, is just going to just add that next layer to it, because whilst we've had the community, on Facebook, and we've had the group chats and everything else, I think now it's just a lot easier to kind of be like, I saw you're going to this place, like we're kind of going to be in the same place, let's, and I'm just very excited. I'm very excited to see what
I think it's definitely, for both of us being members, it's definitely an exciting time to be part of the travel squad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm an Android user, so I'm still sitting on the...
Well, it's coming out soon.
I'm still waiting line, so, but, from what I've seen, it's a really cool thing. And yeah, it's been, If you was to give anybody advice about sort of the travel squad, and also about kind of just spirituality and life coaching and stuff like that, if you was to leave the podcast with two things about the travel squad and life spiritual, what's like 2 one-liners you would say?
I'd say any experience is not a wasted experience. I'd say go into something with the expectation that it's going to leave you with some kind of a positive impact, whether you are jumping into a trip, whether you are jumping into a relationship, whether you are starting a new passion project, whether you are coming up with a creative idea to collaborate on with somebody else. give yourself the understanding that whatever happens, good or bad at the end, you are going to come out of it a radically different person, having learned something about yourself and understanding life and understanding yourself so much better. From the context of the travel squad, I'd say that until you've tried something, you don't know whether you like it or not. And I always come back to it when I meet people who say that they could never travel, and they're like, I could never stay in a hostel, I could never jump on a plane with, you know, and go meet 17 strangers in a foreign country that I've never been to and don't speak the language. I'm like, cool. You're talking about that from experience, are you? Have you tried it?
Yeah.
And the moment you ask that question, is like, have you tried it? They kind of go, well, no, I haven't. I'm like, well, then you don't know.
They all go quiet and go,
because until you try it, you don't know if it's for you.
Yeah.
You can sit and and ah, and you can make a pros and cons list about everything in life, but until you jump in, until you stop sitting on the sidelines of your own life and jump straight in and kind of go, you're in that arena and you're in the boxing ring and you're you know, pulling your punches and you're trying your hardest to get that win and get to a certain place, whatever. You don't know. The only place that you're going to figure out who you are is by sitting in the ring and, you know, just going there and kind of going, right, okay, this is my opportunity. This is a beautiful moment. What can I make of this? But sitting on the sidelines of your own life, there's nothing for you there. There's absolutely nothing for you there.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
So it's been a pleasure.
It has been a very good podcast, I think.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you. And I think thank you for being a friend as well.
Appreciate it, man.
It's been very good.
You're doing great with this, by the way. Love it.